were singular and loud and melodic and deeply original. And that voice, Kurt, we miss you. I miss you. Nirvana defined a moment, a movement for outsiders, for the fags and the fat girls and the broken toys and the shy nerds and the goth kids from Tennessee and Kentucky, for the rockers and the awkward and the fed up and the too smart kids and the bullied. We were a community, a generation, in Nirvana's case, several generations. And the echo chamber of that collective howl, and Allen Ginsberg would have been very proud here. That moment and that voice reverberated into music and film, into politics, into worldview, and so many fields in so many ways and in our lives. And this is not just pop music. This is something much greater than that.
So you're thinking Kurt did it?
Yeah.
Really? But aren't you familiar with the particulars? Like, you know what the top floor of that little garage room is like, right? It's just like this little room, right? It's got a tile floor. And don't you know that there was no blood at the scene of the crime?
How could there be no blood? It shot his head off.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
Everybody who saw the corpse said that the head was intact. You didn't know that. So how is that possible? Well, it's not possible, is it?
January 6th, Tom Grant is interviewed on the Alan Handelman Show and airs his suspicions about Kurt's death. This is the first time he does so publicly. Courtney calls him soon afterwards and leaves a message on his machine saying, quote, "I listened to the thing and I didn't hear you tell like outright lies. I wish you were doing it for the money, and the realization that you are doing it because you think it's right hurts me a lot." January 8th, Pearl Jam's Self-Pollution Radio aired. It was the first time anybody publicly heard Dave's demo tape. They aired Gas Chamber, which was a cover of the Angry Samoans, and Exhausted. Record labels immediately began calling him. In Nirvana, he was just the drummer, but now having written, recorded the songs, and assembling the band himself, responsibility rested solely on him. Overwhelmed, he called John Silva. John suggested he speak with his lawyer, and she in turn told Dave to just release it himself. Dave said, quote, "She said, here's what you do. You start your own record company. You own the record, you put it out, and you just distribute it through a record company." Roswell Records was then born. Quote, "The best part is that no one ever tells us what to do," Dave said, "because I am the president of Roswell Records. At the end of the day, I'm in charge." January 19th, Courtney speaks with Tom Grant and claims there was a second note left for her and she is keeping it in a safety deposit box. Sometime later that month, Courtney and him finally part ways. The last conversation Grant records is him asking Courtney to release the coroner's report. At about this time, Courtney's attorneys file a complaint with the State Department of Consumer Affairs in Sacramento, California. Her complaint was that Grant violated Business and Professions Code by going public with results without her consent. It is later dropped. February 13th, Seattle police make a memo saying Courtney had asked her attorney if the crime scene photos could be destroyed. Her fear was that they would be released to the media. When told that it would make them appear unprofessional and that the photos would never be released, Courtney was still unhappy with the answer. The memo states the officer would try to go further up the chain of command with the request. At this time, Courtney's attorneys make several threats of lawsuits to anyone giving Tom Grant airtime, and many stations drop interviews with him or just outright don't air ones they've already filmed. Alan Handelman is not intimidated and has Grant on multiple times. The next day on Valentine's Day, Hole performed their MTV Unplugged set. They performed You Know You're Right and Old Age, both at that time unreleased Nirvana tracks. On the 19th, the Foo Fighters played their first show at a keg party in Seattle. Their second gig was the 23rd as the opener for a high school cover band in Arcata, California. On the 28th, Ball Hogger Tugboat was released. Watt started plans for the tour, and Dave and Eddie Vedder were asked to join his band. The pair only agreed if they could play on their own in addition, and so Foo Fighters and Hovercraft joined Watt on the road. On April 28th, Watt with Vedder, Grohl, and Smear appeared on The Jon Stewart Show. They performed Big Train and a Blue Oyster Cult cover, The Red and the Black. The tour ends in San Diego on May 20th, and the band was given 2 weeks to prepare for their first headlining show on June 3rd at King's College in London. A little over a month later, on the 4th of July, Foo Fighters was released. That same day, Lollapalooza 95 kicked off with Hole on its lineup. The tour started off with a bang, with Courtney punching Kathleen Hanna in the face. Courtney claimed Kathleen started it by saying, quote, "Where's the baby? In the closet with an IV?" Kathleen swears she didn't do anything and Courtney had attacked her. August 14th, Foo Fighters played David Letterman. The 16th, Hole played in Pittsburgh at Star Lake Amphitheater, where a fan threw a shotgun shell on stage. Quote, "One singular individual with a very sick mind threw something so offensive onto the stage that it was no longer possible for the band to continue," said an announcer once Hole left the stage. August 25th, Hole performed at the Reading Festival. The next day, Foo Fighters performed the same festival. Comparisons were already being drawn to Nirvana having played the festival just 3 years previous, and instead of being lumped into this category, Dave decided not to play the main stage and play in one of the Melody Maker tents instead. The tent was only made to hold a few thousand people, but much more than that showed up for the show to catch a glimpse of the band. So many attended, in fact, that at one point the power was switched off so kids would stop climbing the poles to get a better look at the band. The MTV Awards aired September 7th, and Hole did Violet and dedicated it to Kurt. Shortly after this, Hole disbands, temporarily to pursue their own side projects, and Courtney is cast in the movie The People vs. Larry Flint alongside Woody Harrelson. On December 2nd, Foo Fighters performed on SNL. At the end of that month, Geffen released the singles box set in Europe containing all their CD singles from Nevermind and In Utero. Around this time, Tom Grant receives info that Eldon Hoke was claiming Courtney offered him money to kill Kurt. Tom tries to get him to go to the police. March 6, 1996, Eldon takes a polygraph test. He passed the test at 99.91% chance of telling the truth. Since the test was done in LA, the LAPD sent the info along to the Seattle Police Department. They were not interested as they felt Hoke not a credible reference. The matter was soon forgotten. In the April issue of High Times, Eldon does an interview and gives out the details of the supposed hit job. Hoke knew Courtney since the late 80s after Hole's drummer at the time, Carolyn Rue, was dating the Mentors guitarist. The moment in question apparently happened in late December 1992 when Eldon was at the Rock Shop, a Hollywood record store at 1644 Wilcox Avenue at about 8:30 p.m. Eldon was outside when a limo pulled up with Courtney inside. Hoke claims he was offered $50,000 to off Kurt and make it look like a suicide. Rock Shop manager Kurush Sopidian claims he heard the tail end of the offer. Hoke didn't have a telephone, so he was given a card with the shop's number. At the end of the article, High Times itself warns that Hoke may be doing this for publicity, as his new side band is called Courtney Killed Kurt. In June 1996, Courtney announces the greenhouse is getting demolished. She claimed she did so for safety reasons, as it had become, quote, more popular than the Space Needle. This summer, Foo Fighters were doing shows with Alanis Morissette. This introduced Dave to Taylor Hawkins, Alanis' drummer. The two started to bond over liquor and rock music. September 13th, Feeling Minnesota is released to theaters. Its title is taken from the Soundgarden's song Outshine, and Courtney plays a waitress in it. October 1st, From the Muddy Banks of the Wishkah was released. The title itself a reference to the bridge featured in Something in the Way. Promotional singles for the album were released in select areas of the world to enhance radio play. In Australia, a promo box set was released for Aneurysm, Heart-Shaped Box, and Polly. It also featured Never Mind It's an Interview, a promotional interview released in '92. November 18th, the Foo Fighters started what would be demos on The Color and the Shape. Dave called the session a, quote, bad experience, and all the tapes were scrapped. At about this time, Dave was experiencing marital troubles with wife Jennifer Youngblood, and many of the songs that would appear on the new album addressed relationships. At one point, the band was going to make the cover of the album A Therapist's Couch. On Christmas Day, The People vs. Larry Flynt was released. Courtney received critical acclaim for her portrayal of Althea Leisure and was nominated for a Golden Globe. February 7th, 1997, Unsolved Mysteries aired their episode on Kurt's death. In March 1997, Courtney announces she is selling the house. It is later bought by an employee of Microsoft for $3 million. April 11th, Eldon Hoke's last interview is filmed for the upcoming Kurt and Courtney movie, and on the 19th, Eldon is found dead. May 20th, Foo Fighters' The Color and the Shape is released. August 29th, Chris joined Dave on stage for a Foo Fighters live show in Seattle. They played Purple Rain and Communication Breakdown. September 4th, while at the MTV Video Music Awards, Pat Smear reveals after playing Monkey Wrench that he is leaving Foo Fighters. His replacement, Franz Stahl, takes over for the show. At the end of that month, Chris, Courtney, and Dave enter into an agreement under the title LLC, which stands for Limited Liability Company, that split the ownership of Nirvana 3 ways. February 27th, 1998, the documentary Kurt and Courtney is released to theaters. In April, the book Who Killed Kurt Cobain was released. This was the first book suggesting Kurt was murdered. The 23rd, Sonic Youth's Sunday single is released. One of the B-sides is a cover of Moist Vagina. Late July 1998, a Nirvana box set is announced. The estimated date will be in 2000 or 2001. September 8th, Hole's album Celebrity Skin was released. On it was the track Playing Your Song, which was about Kurt. The sessions for Celebrity Skin were especially tough on drummer Patty Schemmel, and she leads the band. Courtney said, quote, I did this very classic rock horrible thing where I let the producer tell me that she sucked. Let him play me a tape. This is so like out of the rock bad cliche book. Let him play me a tape of her sounding the worst, that he had basically cobbled together. Courtney later called producer Michael Beinhorn, quote, a Nazi. On April 11th, 1999, head detective in investigating Kurt's death scene, Sergeant Cameron, is brought up on corruption charges. He is accused of participating in the theft of $10,000 from a crime scene and staging a crime which resulted in a man being killed by police back in '97. Cameron never testifies and immediately retires. No charges are brought against him. April 13th, MTV News reports that one of Kurt's former high school teachers, Robert Hunter, is selling artwork Kurt did. The two pieces ranged from $2,000 to $5,000. The auction is shut down after a lawsuit from the Cobain family. In the September issue of Kerrang, Dave tells details of working on the box set and has handed the project over to Geffen. Quote, someone else is compiling all the material and rounding up some pretty obscure stuff I didn't even know existed. Nirvana was a band 3 to 4 years before I ever joined, and I think there's some really weird old shit that people would be very entertained to hear. In October, Jack and Dino revealed, quote, Sub Pop was planning a 10-year anniversary reissue of Bleach for this month, with possible bonus cuts, but their and Nirvana's lawyers had a little hissy fit, so the whole thing has been delayed indefinitely. One of the bonus tracks to have been added was the Jury's cover of Ain't It a Shame. That same month, it was revealed that the Rocket writer Charles Cross was writing a biography on Kurt, originally entitled The Will of Instinct. At the end of the month, Sweet 75 broke up. Chris started focusing more on his time with Jam Pack. November 2nd, Foo Fighters released their third album, There's Nothing Left to Lose. The first track is Stacked Actors. The song comes under fire when many took it as an attack aimed at Courtney. Dave said, quote, I wrote Stacked Actors about everything that is fake and everything that is plastic and glamorous and unreal. So if that pertains to anyone that comes to mind, then there you go. Drummer Taylor Hawkins said, quote, she needn't be too vain. It's not all about her. At this time, Chris joins Jello Biafra and Kim Thale to form No WTO Combo. They had a show planned for November 30th at the Showbox. Chris walked the streets that week and was both impressed with the revolution in the air and disgusted by the vandalism. Quote, I was really disappointed. I was having a lot of fun. It was inspiring. There was this carnival atmosphere. People were expressing themselves creatively. There was a lot of time put into that kind of expression and just marching, organizing the demonstration. But this person was up on this awning of this hotel, I think it was the Westin, writing some stupid slogan with spray paint. And I was just appalled by that, and I yelled at them. I go, how would you like it if somebody did that to your house? And these other people who were standing next to me yelled, F you. I'm like, man, you know this is supposed to be a non-violent protest, and that's violence against property. So I just left in disgust. It's like, there you go. There's your anarchy, kids. Whoopee. The gig was canceled when the venue's staff couldn't get past the police's, quote, curfew zone. They simply played the next night, doing an acoustic set at the Central Tavern. This was the gig where local record producer Mark Kaviner offered to record the band the next night at the Showbox. The band did so, and later Chris took the recordings to Jack and Dino for mixing. On December 3rd, during an interview with BBC Radio, Paul McCartney was asked what was the best thing to have happened in music recently. His reply was, quote, Nirvana, and they belong somewhere beside Jimi Hendrix. December 9th, Courtney appeared on Howard Stern and fired back at Dave. Tired of feeling he was writing songs about her, she drops info about Kurt and Dave being estranged toward the end of the band's tenure. Quote, for 5 years I've been quiet about this. Kurt loved him at first because he was sweet, funny, and lovely, and then he turned into such a dick. This whirlwind of success was happening for Dave, and he really turned his back on Kurt. His singer had a drug problem, and he wouldn't talk to him. He wouldn't take his phone calls. He wasn't his friend anymore. February 7th, 2000, the Melvins released their album, The Crybaby. The first track is a cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit, with 70s teen idol Leif Garrett on vocals. May 9th, it is revealed the box set would not be revealed until 2001, coinciding with Nevermind's 10th anniversary. Chris said, quote, I know that people really want it, and they really miss it, so if I can put time and heart and soul into it, then that's the least I can do. May 16th, Live from the Battle in Seattle was released on Alternative Tentacles, Jello's record label. At the end of the month, Chris did an interview where he talked about life after Nirvana. Quote, I don't feel like putting a band together and doing that whole thing. It doesn't yank my crank anymore. It took me, I don't know, what is it now, 6 years? It took me that long to settle down and to have perspective and the whole survivor thing, anger, grief. I miss Kurt a lot. June 23rd, Seattle opens the Experience Music Project. One of the exhibits is Northwest Passage, which focuses on the music scene of Seattle. Around this time, HoldMusic.com releases the version of Asking For It with Kurt on vocals. This had been floating around in trader circles since 1996. In November, Cross's book title is changed to Heavier Than Heaven, and a release date is set. March 5th, 2001, on Hole.com, Courtney talked about the upcoming box set. Quote, Eric is the person solely responsible for going around the house after Casey died and grabbing all those tapes. The people in the house, Silva, the lawyers, and the Nirvana members were all stealing like crazy. Not Chris, but Dave Grohl mysteriously owns a couple of Black Flag vinyl LPs and a Flipper LP that have Kurt's name on them, and Silva has a song that when I ordered a catalog for this box set, he had a tape of a song no one has but me. He only got it from one place, my house. Eric is the one who got the 109 tapes and then sat on them for the last 5 years. In early June 2001, while shooting the movie 24 Hours, Courtney was robbed of $10,000 and the wedding ring Kurt gave her. Late June 2001, Courtney filed the suit against the box set containing You Know You're Right. They wanted to release it on a set, and she said it would have been wasted on a box set, was better off on a compilation like the Beatles' One album. Chris disagreed. He said, quote, I've always considered everything she said. We've considered it and agreed and said, hey, that's a great idea, Courtney. I tried to go along with Courtney as best as I could, but there's only so much you can do. The court case was originally set for December 2002, which would obviously set the box set back a little over a year. Court documents also reveal that the album was negotiated with Geffen as far back as July 2nd, 1996. Quote, you agreed to deliver to Geffen a so-called box set, multiple record LP comprised of no less than 45 masters embodying previously unreleased recordings of musical performances by artists, so-called B-sides, and other masters. The masters to be embodied on the box set shall be determined by you in meaningful, good faith consultation with Geffen. You shall deliver the box set to Geffen no later than June 30th, 2001. On Courtney's side of things, this was presented. Quote, on the present record, Courtney Love has the clear contractual power to prevent release of previously unreleased recordings of Kurt Cobain without her consent. An injunction will issue to prevent the irreparable injury that would flow if Grohl or Novoselic deliver or otherwise release previously unreleased masters to Geffen Universal without her consent, including specifically any recording by Kurt Cobain of You Know You're Right. Quote, defendants Grohl, Novoselic, and Nirvana LLC are specifically prohibited from releasing to defendants Geffen Universal or any other person or entity, and from otherwise publishing the song You Know You're Right without either the written consent of plaintiffs or further court order. Later, Chris posted on his website that in 1998, quote, Nirvana was approached by an MTV executive and filmmaker who wanted to direct a biography on the life of Kurt Cobain. Her approach and ideas were compelling. Also, the film could dovetail into a promotional effort around the box set, a 10th anniversary reissue of Nevermind, and other Nirvana product. I was informed that MTV and Paramount Pictures would produce the film. After we were ensured a good measure of approval rights, Dave and I got on board. After a while, the whole film issue sputtered out. Courtney then claimed on Hole.com that Chris said he would delete master tapes of Nirvana recordings. Quote, regarding Mrs. Love's assertion that I threatened to erase Nirvana master tapes, I can only say that my words were taken out of context as a mean of attempting to distort my meaning for the purpose of a more potentially convincing legal brief. After listening to hours and hours of recordings for the box set project, I determined that there were some outtakes that sounded really bad. In this day and age of limited copyright protection in cyberspace, I was afraid that these recordings would leak out of our organization and hit the World Wide Web. I told Courtney that I felt we should erase some of these tapes because they are redundant and a poor representation of the group. Having worked so closely with Kurt Cobain, I know that he would feel the same, as we occasionally practiced this while he was alive, Kurt had a very high level of discretion in regards to art. Chris went on to say, quote, "For instance, neither Dave Grohl nor myself have the right to use a solo photo of Kurt Cobain in the promotion of any Nirvana-related material without the expressed consent of Mrs. Love. Neither David Griffin nor myself can release anything using the music of Nirvana without the expressed consent of Mrs. Love." In late August, CNN reported there was a tape of Nirvana's first ever gig circulating. Christopher Cross said, quote, "If you think about that, the historical significance of having a tape of the first concert by any band, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, or Nirvana, is amazing." In December 2001, the different sides of the lawsuit took to fans on the net. On the 12th, Chris and Dave put up a letter detailing the process of trying to release the box set and finally air their feelings on Courtney. Quote, "She couldn't care less about Nirvana fans. She is using Nirvana's music as a bargaining chip to increase leverage for her own personal gain without any regard for the Nirvana legacy. Our music is just a pawn in her endless legal battles and her obsessive need for publicity and attention." 1 week later, on the 19th, Kurt's mother Wendy posted online attacking Dave and Chris. Quote, "I know that Nirvana was never a partnership of any sort. I know that in the last year of his life, my son despised his bandmates and told me many times that he no longer wanted to play with them or have anything to do with them." January 25th, 2002, Chris's new band, Eyes Adrift, plays their first show at I Spy in Seattle. February 15th, the New York Post announced that portions of Kurt's journals may get published, and 11 days later, a publisher picks up the project. April 18th, it's revealed Chris and Dave want Courtney psychologically evaluated to prove she is, quote, "too incapacitated to manage her business partnership with them." On the 26th, the judge dismissed it. May 7th, someone posts on LiveNirvana.com discussion board saying that he has a copy of You Know You're Right. On the 10th, he posted 3 clips online, and when skepticism followed, he produced a 4th. Originally, the user from Spain was going to post the entire song, but this was stopped when Courtney heard of the leak. The middle of May, Rolling Stone publishes their Who Owns Kurt Cobain issue. Material cut from the issue is posted online in which Courtney speaks of Kurt's tapes. Quote, "On those tapes," Wolf continues, "are everything from shitty collages to some pretty stunning, awe-inspiring acoustic songs to stupid, fucked up shit. The songs began at our home, usually in a closet or in his room, and I have everything from stuff you've heard in demo form to gasp-out-loud acoustic songs to things he's playing with Patty and Eric to things he's playing with a fucking heroin dealer to collages." She mentions 3 songs, The Sun, Opinions, and Ivy League. May 23rd, Hole breaks up. Late June, both sides finally reach a compromise. The box set will be released just without You Know You're Right, which will end up on a 1-disc best-of compilation. On August 6, 2002, Nicholas Hartshorn, the examiner of Kurt's body, dies. He was also the examiner for Christian Path. September 23rd, 99X in Atlanta played You Know You're Right for an hour straight. He receives a call from a representative of Interscope and demands that he stop. The DJ refuses and continues. September 24th, Eyes Adrift's album is released. The 26th, Seattle radio station The End not only plays the song multiple times, but offers it streaming on their website. The 30th, a statement is released saying the lawsuit is completely resolved and the best of Nirvana will be released November 12th. The video for You Know You're Right is released October 14th. On the 28th, Newsweek published its cover story about Kurt's journals. On the 29th, Nirvana is finally released. Upon release, Stephen Thomas Erlewine of AllMusic wrote, quote, "The presence of a few tracks, along with placing You Know You're Right at the end where it belongs, would have made this collection not just stronger, but possibly definitive. Will Bryant of Pitchfork said it was, quote, a party mix for parents who want to appreciate Cobain's Lennon-esque knack for great melodies without having to click past Scentless Apprentice or Territorial Pissings. Utterly inoffensive, an impulse buy from Columbia House perhaps, with no more artistic value than the Eagles' greatest hits or the Beatles' One. November 4th, Journals is released. In 2003, Chris becomes DJ Kano on Coast Community Radio 91.1 in Astoria, Oregon. He holds this until 2010. July 21st, 2003, Fender puts the Jag-Stang back into production. July 31st, Isadrift broke up. Chris said, quote, what next? As far as the music industry goes, I quit. I can't deal. I can't read the magazines, listen to the radio, or watch music television without feeling like I've come in from outer space. September 27th, Smart Studios, where the band recorded demos for Nevermind, was demolished when a 10-ton truck swerved off the road. November 20th, Chris announced he is considering running for Washington State Lieutenant Governor. Late February, a casting call is sent out from Gus Van Sant for his next film, Last Days. The statement stresses, quote, we are interested in real people. We want to meet all types of people with interesting personalities and style. March 22nd, it is announced Chris is writing a book. It will be titled Of Grunge and Government. Around this time, Courtney is interviewed by Kurt Loder. As if alluding to her recent relapses in court battles, she mentions Kurt in, quote, they say it takes 2 years to get over something like that. Then it gets better. You can move on. But then, 8 years later, it all starts coming back, all over again. Chris, however, wouldn't address things at all, saying, quote, I go into privacy mode this time of year. It's something I don't like to think about, much less talk about. April 5th, Seattle radio station 107.7 The End held a day-long tribute to Kurt, playing interviews, bootleg concerts, and every song they recorded. Also scheduled, DJ No Name interviewed Butch Vig, Steve Albini, Charles Cross, Jonathan Poneman, and Jack Endino. That same day, a small fan vigil was held at Veretta Park, and MTV was there to film it. As expected, the 10th anniversary of Kurt's death was a media frenzy. April 8th, Courtney announced that she had hired a forensic accountant to investigate Francis's private account made by Kurt. At this time, she was claiming someone was taking money from the account. April 13th, the Aberdeen Daily World published their intents on getting a tribute to Kurt in Aberdeen. In the April 19th issue of Papal magazine, Donald Cobain breaks his silence as him and Jenny send a letter to the editor. Quote, our family has dreaded the 10th anniversary of the death of our son, stepson, and brother, Kurt Cobain. Not only do we mourn his passing, but we can never forget him because even after 10 years, we're constantly reminded by the controversy that surrounds his death and the innuendos that he was murdered. With the death of a loved one by suicide, a family experiences the guilt and what-ifs. With the death of an icon, it never goes away. We all know that Kurt killed himself. Courtney did not kill him, nor did she have him killed. We hope that all the quacks who try to make money by questioning his death will remember his music and remember that he did have a family that loved him and a beautiful little girl who doesn't deserve to forever be reminded of the garbage surrounding his death. September 2nd, the nonprofit group, the Kurt Cobain Memorial Committee, states the first project they want is to add a small sign stating, "Come as you are, birthplace of Nirvana," to the already existing one that states, "Welcome to Aberdeen." September 3rd, it is announced the release date for the box set is November 23rd. September 15th, Chris' book is released. Late September, George Bush started using the Times Like These song in his ads, without Dave's consent. Quote, "I don't give a shit if he likes our band, but I take it personally when a politician that doesn't represent my personal beliefs uses music that I poured my heart and soul into for his personal gain." October 29th, Q Magazine presents to the world the track listing of With the Lights Out. The set will include 61 tracks and a 20-track DVD. November 8th, MTV releases a trailer for With the Lights Out. November 12th, MTV2 airs clips from the DVD as part of their Spankin' New series. The 23rd, after a 6-year wait, With the Lights Out is released in the US. Right before release, a promo EP titled Selections from With the Lights Out was sent to radio stations with the songs White Lace and Strange, Blandest, Lithium, Heart-Shaped Box, and You Know You're Right. The box set was packaged in heat-sensitive packaging, which would change color when touched. A 60-page booklet was enclosed that featured liner notes by Thurston Moore and journalist Neil Strauss. The DVD featured 19 live performances and the original In Bloom video, and the menu screens feature home video footage, some of which was shot by Kurt. January 2nd, 2005, in his newsletter, Jack Endino explains why the Fecal Matter tape wasn't included in the box set. Quote, "A deadline crunch happened at the end, with Silva, artist management, and Courtney's people trying to agree on a final track listing for the box set as the deadline for the booklet art and layout got nearer. That's why there's a picture of the Fecal Matter cassette in the booklet, but no music from it. Courtney's people decided that it was not really Nirvana and held it back at the last minute, which is why the set starts with Heartbreaker, which would not have been my choice." March 25th, the DVD for Nevermind was released in the Classic Album series. The disc features new interviews with Butch Vig, Dave, and Chris. April 6th, the Kurt Cobain Memorial Committee got their wish, and a Come As You Are sign was added to the Welcome to Aberdeen one. Kurt's grandfather Leland said, quote, "I think it's a good idea, and it's about time." April 30th, an auction was happening in which a guitar Kurt's mother Wendy had made and was being sold to raise money for breast cancer. The guitar is covered in pictures of Kurt. July 22nd, Last Days was given a limited US release. The movie is roughly based on Kurt's life. Starring in the movie is Kim Gordon. Thurston Moore also contributed heavily, starting out as music curator, then being bumped up to advisor to Michael Pitt due to his knowledge of Kurt. August 30th, they were both interviewed in Uncut magazine in correlation with Last Day's release. When the topic of Kurt's death comes up, the interviewer asks the two if they know why Kurt killed himself, and Kim said, quote, "I don't even know that he killed himself. There are people close to him that don't think he did." The interviewer asks if she believes Kurt was murdered by someone, and she replies, quote, "I do, yes." September 14th, Geffen announces the release of a Best of the Box compilation. The set will be known as Sliver, the Best of the Box, and on November 3rd it is released. This marks a couple of firsts in that the cover and title were chosen by Francis. Also, Spank Through from the Fecal Matter tapes is released. November 17th, the Aberdeen Daily World announced that film crews from LA were in town filming a movie about Kurt's life, with narration by Kurt himself. This movie ended up becoming About a Son. December 22nd, it is reported in the New York Post gossip section that Courtney is interested in selling the rights to Kurt's songs catalog due to recent money problems. In the January 2006 issue of ID magazine, Francis gives an interview. Quote, "Sometimes I wish I wasn't so much at home alone, and that it wasn't about nannies and chauffeurs and all that stuff. I get to meet everyone I want, and I get quite a lot of attention because of it, you know. But of course, it hurts when you see a lot of lies about her in tabloids, and then you think, well, it's not that cool to have a cool mom. I don't like seeing my mom upset. No one does, right?" February 15th, a pair of Kurt's PJs hits eBay for $10,000. Pushing things even further on the 28th, Kurt's armchair hits eBay for the same price. Somewhat better, however, on March 2nd, Chris puts up his Black Eagle bass used during the In Utero tour, with proceeds going to Music for America, an organization that registers, educates, and engages young people in politics. March 12th, Courtney's legal troubles were confirmed when in the Sunday Mirror she said, quote, "It's not a fire sale or anything, but I'm selling 25% of the catalog for quite a lot of money." March 26th, the house at 17 Nussbaum Road, where Nirvana played their first show, went up for sale. The 31st, the 25% sale of song rights was bought by Larry Mestel, former GM of Virgin Records, for more than $50 million. Courtney said, quote, "I took on a strategic partner, Larry Mestel, to help me co-manage the estate because it was overwhelming. The affairs of Nirvana are so massive and so huge that they've all fallen on my lap." After taking down the item after no bids, the seller once again puts Kurt's chair on eBay on April 8th, selling for somewhere around $71. March 2006, an incomplete version of the Fecal Matter demo shows up on the net. The clips are confirmed authentic by Mike Ziegler, who had been given a copy of the tape. In September, 2 books on Nirvana come out. One is Nirvana by Everett True, the other is In Utero for the 33 1/3 series by Gillian Gard. On the 10th, About a Son is released. July 20th, Pat joins Foo Fighters again for an acoustic tour. November 7th, Live Tonight Sold Out is re-released on DVD. November 13th, Chris joins Flipper for their tour. January 13th, 2007, according to Access Hollywood, Courtney is considering making Heavier Than Heaven into a movie. Quote, "If it gets made, it will of course be A-list and a high-end film. But that announcement will happen again if and when these deals close with production. There's no point publishing that this biopic is presently active when it is not." April 14th, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame listed Nevermind number 10 in its top 200 albums. April 26th, Sergeant Cameron passes away. May 14th, the Daily Swarm posts an ad for Doc Martens online featuring Kurt. The images were pulled before they were even really used, as Courtney never really approved them. May 23rd, Scentless Apprentice was used in the TV show Lost. This was the first time Nirvana's music was ever featured in a TV show. In November, more songs of the Fecal Matter tape were leaked. On the 7th, the new issue of NME came out and stated that Universal Pictures had purchased Heavier Than Heaven and the rights to use Nirvana's music. November 20th, Unplugged was released on DVD. This was the unedited performance, much as you would have seen it live, and featured rehearsal footage. April 5th, Heritage Auctions featured Art of Kurt's via his high school teacher. Pieces included a drawing of the Fender logo, a pic of a sumo breaking guitars, and 2 more indicative of Kurt's later artwork. July 23rd, it is reported Frances might be doing an internship at Rolling Stone magazine. Some insiders said, quote, "She doesn't get coffee for anyone, calls in sick all the time, and wears funny outfits." While another claimed, quote, "She's a great girl and we're thrilled to have her." That same day, Spencer Eldon, the child featured on the cover of Nevermind, does an interview with NPR. Spencer said, quote, "Quite a few people in the world have seen my penis, so that's kinda cool. I'm just a normal kid living it up and doing the best I can while I'm here." He also states that in February of 1992, he received a Platinum Award and a teddy bear. October 27th, the book Cobain Unseen is released. The book is interactive in that it allows the reader to hold and pull out reproductions of works of Kurt or items you would have seen around his home. December 20th, a website called WarnFree.com offers replicas of some of Kurt's shirts. Included are the Grunge is Dead shirt, Hi How Are You, and motorbike shirt Kurt wore in the late 80s. May 21st, Flipper's new album is released with Chris on bass. June 23rd, the bass guitar Kurt used on the Organized Confusion and Fecal Matter demos was sold at a New York auction for $43,750. July 17th, it is announced that Guitar Hero 5 will feature the song Lithium on it. August 19th, Chris appears in Bobcat Goldthwait's movie, World's Greatest Dad. Bob claims the scene made him think of Chris immediately because, quote, "You know how sometimes when people die, people reinvent them in a way because they want to make it about themselves, or they lose sight of who the person really was and that they were really a person. I don't know if you can relate to that." September 10th, Courtney and Chris and Dave object to the likeness of Kurt being used in Guitar Hero 5. Originally, he was only available for Nirvana content, then he was an unlockable character that could be used for any song on the game. Chris and Dave issued a statement, quote, "We want people to know that we are dismayed and very disappointed in the way a facsimile of Kurt is used in the Guitar Hero game. It's hard to watch an image of Kurt pantomiming other artists' music alongside cartoon characters. Kurt Cobain wrote songs that hold a lot of meaning to people all over the world. We feel he deserves better." Courtney also launches a lawsuit. October 2010, Dave announces live on BBC Radio that Chris would be on the new Foo Fighters album, Wasting Light, playing bass and accordion. November 2nd, 2010, frontman of the President of the United States, Chris Ballou's side project, Casper Baby Bands, releases their album This Is Fun, on which Chris plays bass on a cover of Sliver. November 3rd, both Live at Reading and the Bleach reissue come out. Live at Reading hit top fan lists for a Nirvana release for some time. For the reissue of Bleach, Sub Pop hires George Marino, who did the Led Zeppelin remasters, to handle duties along with Chris and Indina. The second disc features a live show recorded in Portland, Oregon on February 9th, 1990. December 21st, court documents were filed by the state of California that placed Francis into the care of Kurt's mom and sister Kim. Lawyers of Francis filed a court request to seal legal documents relating to, quote, "to a minor and allegations of domestic violence." That same night, the Foo Fighters played at Paladinos in California. Dave said, quote, "So we go to the studio that day to practice. We run through the song once, and then Chris says, 'Hey, you guys want to do some moldy oldies?' Me and Pat look at each other and go, 'Okay, what do you want to do?' He says, 'Let's do Teen Spirit.' Okay, I hadn't played that song in 18 years. I haven't even played the drum beat to that song in 18 years, and we played it. And there's only one person in the studio, who is Scott, the studio manager. Halfway through the song, he opens up the door and looks in and watches for a minute, then closes the door again. We ended the song and look at each other like, that was strange. We walk out and Scott looked at us and said, 'Yeah, it sounded pretty good. You guys should keep that.'" January 30th, Courtney speaks on the Guitar Hero subject again, saying, quote, "I think Kurt would be fine with having 5 Kurt Cobains singing the song Wannabe. Like, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I think he'd find that really funny." March 28th, Patty Schemmel's documentary, Hit So Hard, is premiered in New York. There's a lot of home movie footage of Kurt featured, and it shows off a Kurt and Courtney co-wrote song called Stinking of You. April 16th, for Record Store Day, the Hormoning EP is re-released on vinyl. That same day, Nirvana, Taking Punk to the Masses, opens at the Seattle EMP. There that night was Chris Novoselic, and in the crowd was Kurt's mom Wendy, Jillian Garr, and Charles Cross. Activities that took place that week were a guitar class entitled Grunge Guitar 101, How to Silk Screen a T-Shirt, and button making. July 19th, Spin offers free for download Nevermind, featuring the entire Nevermind album redone by various artists. Nice throwbacks are the Meat Puppets and Vaselines being on the compilation. September 23rd, Chris, Dave, and Butch Vig sat down with Jon Stewart for a 2-hour interview for Sirius XM about Nevermind. The next day, Nevermind Super Deluxe is released. The set features 4 CDs and 1 DVD. CD 1 is the original album with B-sides. CD 2 is demos. CD 3 is the original mix of the album before Andy Wallace took over. CD 4 is the Paramount Halloween show, and the DVD is video of that same live show. October 30th, the Kurt Cobain signature Jaguar guitar is released in the UK. November 25th, for Record Store Day, all the Nevermind singles were re-released on vinyl. March 30th, 2012, TheFix.com reports Courtney is selling 5 more pieces of Kurt's work. April 10th, Courtney accuses Dave by means of Twitter of trying to seduce Francis. Dave shot back soon after saying, quote, "Unfortunately, Courtney is on another hateful Twitter rant. These new accusations are upsetting, offensive, and absolutely untrue." Francis even replied a day later saying, quote, "While I'm generally silent on the affairs of my biological mother, her recent tirade has taken a gross turn. I have never been approached by Dave Grohl in more than a platonic way. I'm in a monogamous relationship and very happy. Twitter should ban my mother." December 12th, Dave, Chris, and Pat reunited with Paul McCartney for the concert for Sandy. This was billed as, quote, "a Nirvana reunion," even though the 3 musicians had already played together at the end of 2011 at Palladino's. 3 days later, they played SNL. January 13th, Dave's documentary, Sound City, was aired at the Sundance Film Festival, and it was released March 30th. The documentary details the history of the studio, and Dave tells of the impact of the recording board has had on his life. At the end of the movie, the studio closes down, and Grohl simply purchases the board from them for his own studio. May 29th, Leland Cobain dies. Leland had been active in the Nirvana legacy for years, literally having strangers enter his home to talk about Kurt. June 5th, members of Nirvana and Steve Albini were spotted in Chicago at the Peace Pizza restaurant with Rick Nielsen of Cheap Trick. Rumors began of digging up old tracks for remixing, and on July 10th, it was announced In Utero would get an anniversary release. September 23rd, the In Utero re-release comes out. It contains the original '93 release with some B-sides, then the 2013 Steve Albini remixing of the album, finally marking a completely Albini mixed officially released In Utero. Also included is the Live and Loud show and a director's cut edit of the heart-shaped box video, and the first 3 discs released on vinyl, almost a nod back to Kurt's original plans of having the Albini mixed version to be pressed on vinyl. September 25th, Kurt's childhood house goes up for sale. The asking price is $500,000. Quote, "We've decided to sell the home to create a legacy for Kurt. And yes, there are some mixed feelings since we all have loved the home, and it carries so many great memories," Kim Cobain said via email. "But our family has moved on from Washington and feels it's time to let go of the home." October 16th, Nirvana is nominated to be entered into the Rock Hall, and they win nomination in their first year on December 17th. January 26th, Cut Me Some Slack wins a Grammy. To commemorate Kurt's birthday, Aberdeen unveils the Kurt Cobain statue on February 20th, and Kurt Cobain Day is announced the same day. 1 month later, the Polaroids of Kurt's death scene were finally developed by Seattle police. They soon were leaked to the internet and media, and false claims spring up that the case had been reopened. March 28th, more photos of the scene are released. April 10th, exactly 20 years since the epic vigil held in Kurt's honor, Nirvana are elected into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Michael Stipe inducts the band, describing them as the true definition of lightning in a bottle and saying, quote, "This is not just pop music, this is something much greater than that." Chris and Dave were then called onto the stage, and accepting for Kurt were Kim, Wendy, Courtney, and Kurt's half-sister Brianne. Dave spoke first and took it upon himself to spotlight Nirvana's other drummers that came before him, even calling Chad Channing out in the crowd and crediting him with the In Bloom drum line. He leaves with, quote, "I think that's the deal, is that you look up to your heroes and you shouldn't be intimidated by them. You should be inspired by them. Don't look at the poster on your wall and go, oh God, I could never do that. Look at that poster and go, fuck, I'm gonna do that." Chris then spoke and went on to thank Buzz Osborne for introducing him and Kurt to punk in the first place, and to thank Jack Endino, Steve Albini, and Butch Vig. The most shocking point on that night occurred when Courtney spoke and went on to thank Dave and Chris, and even hugged Dave afterwards, bringing to an end a fight close to 15 years old. Nirvana then performed 4 songs. An all-female cast was chosen to handle Kurt's vocals, and Joan Jett did the vocals for Smells Like Teen Spirit, Andy Clark did Lithium, Kim Gordon Aneurysm, and Lord joined everyone on stage for All Apologies. That same night, after the ceremony, the band showed up unannounced at St. Vitus in Brooklyn and played an entire set once again with Jett and Clark, and now with Jay Massis and John McCauley of Deer Tick. In the span of one night, Nirvana had been given the highest honor of their profession and played for the first time in over 20 years. The little blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy from Aberdeen had cemented himself as one of the all-time greats. More than 20 years later, we still wait for rock to have a connection with us the way Nirvana did. We still long for that kind of intimacy and energy and honesty that we forget the original message. We forget the beginnings of things and what was overcome and how things changed. Who is the next Nirvana? You are.
I'm so happy 'cause today I found my friends in my head. I'm so ugly, that's okay, 'cause so are you. Broke our mirrors Sunday morning, every day for all I care. I'm not scared, light my candles in a daze, 'cause I found God. So lonely, that's okay, I shave my head. I'm not sad, and just maybe I'm to blame for all I've heard. I'm not sure, I'm excited, I can't wait to meet you there. I don't care, I'm so horny, that's okay, my will